Hi, this is a video to introduce you to legal research, or if you want to be more exact about it, evidence-based legal problem solving. Legal research is easier, but why did I seek to define it in those terms? Well, first of all, I think rather than thinking of research as an academic or abstract activity, it's better that we think about it as problem solving. We think about it as something that's not just about going and finding information and collecting it, but it's about using that information and focusing on that active purpose of solving a problem. And the second part of that definition, we look at evidence-based research, is an issue that's become very important in the medical field, and that's where we look very seriously at the foundations of the evidence of the that underlies the information that we use, so that rather than just following along because it's something that everyone else does or something we've always believed, we're always very critically looking at the evidence base of that information. So that little aside of definitions done. This is going to be a skills-based subject. I think it's one you're going to enjoy. It's one that's going to require you to be very self-motivated, but it's going to be one where I think the topic that we're looking at, which will be one of the a particular law reform issue, will be one that you'll be able to get your teeth into and be able to actually see how you can apply those research skills to an actual real problem. Now, throughout the course, you will see the a thing that we call the legal research skills matrix, and it's basically a grid of skills divided into 12 components, and in each of those components there's 5 levels of skills, ranging from A, which is the absolute beginning law student or layperson, the sort of knowledge we'd expect that you'd have before you started studying, through to level B, which is what we expect at first year, level C, which is what we expect students to graduate with, and it's the focus of what we're doing in this particular subject, and level D and level E correspond to honours and to postgraduate students. So what is the purpose of this rather sort of complicated and unwieldy matrix? It's to give you an idea of the way in which your skills will develop over time, and to see your skills as not a once only learned thing. You don't pick up legal research once, learn it once, and there you go, you've got it. It's something you develop over time. And by giving you the different levels of that matrix, you'll be able to assess yourself each week and be able to look at the particular skills taught that week, where you sit against the matrix, and what you'll need to do to get yourself up to the required level for this subject, which will be the level B, the level C area. But the other good thing about the matrix is that you can actually see further than this particular subject, and some of you will want to go further. Some of you will already be at or above the level that's required for any particular task. Others you'll be at different levels, but some levels you'll go, I'm already there, in which case by all means go further, and we're giving you suggestions as to what you can look at and things you can learn to take that further. So the matrix is there. You'll see it each week, and each week in the study guides. It's there to provide you with a sense of each thing that we do is a component of a journey. It's a step along the road, and as you go along you will have an opportunity to see where you sit and to be able to go as far as you want along that particular journey. I know that's different from previous modes of thinking when you study, when you think about, you know, the required knowledge in a particular area. But in skills areas, we'll find that everyone is at different levels each week, and we need to be able to find a way to balance those and for people to be able to think about where they sit. Anyway, you'll see those as we go from week to week. Now, in terms of the approach of this subject, and particularly getting into the point of assessment, which I'm sure is what is the most urgent of topics for students, this subject focuses on a single outcome. You writing up a public submission to a law reform body in a current law reform matter. Each of the assessment tasks, you have 3 assessment tasks, each of them are part of this. So there is a plan that you submit at the beginning of the process, there's the final submission that you submit at the end for assessment, and I'm hoping you'll also submit to the law reform body as a practical and realistic exercise, and of course something you can put in your professional portfolio. And the third piece is a research portfolio. Now, this is not to be confused with your professional career portfolio. It's a different thing. A research portfolio is an assembly of the bits and pieces of planning and documents and notes that you make on a particular research project. Now, I'm doing a separate video on that one, so we'll talk about that one in more depth. But it is basically showing your working. It is showing what you did along the way and how you reach that outcome. So all those three pieces fit together. They're assessed separately, but they fit together. There's the plan, there's the portfolio, which is all the things that you did along the way to get there. And those are modelled week to week in the workshops. Each of the stages are modelled as a stage of tasks. So you can complete that research task week by week. And then the final report, the final thing that you submit. Now, in terms of which part of the what law reform issue and what part, that was something we'll resolve in the first few weeks, of course, and that'll depend, of course, on what's available and what's happening in the world of law reform. And while you'll be put into teams in relation to particular sections or areas of the issues papers that you will look at, this is not a team-assessed subject. So it's an area where a good team will support you, and it'll be good to actually have colleagues who are working on similar areas of that issues paper who will be able to give you support. But it's certainly not a group work subject, which I'm sure I'm hearing lots of sighs of relief at the moment. Research practically in the real world is something you're going to have to work in teams quite frequently, but it's not something that I think we can satisfactorily model in an online subject. And I'm well aware of the problems that students have with being able to coordinate teamwork and write projects as a team. So instead we'll have a model where you will have a team, and the team will be there to support you, and if they don't support you, you'll still be able to do well individually without having to deal with sort of free riders and those sorts of issues that I know everyone is concerned about. So anyway, those are the components of the assessment. Have a look at the study guide. There's more information there. There are also rubrics on each of those. Now, the next question is the question of why law reform? When there's so many different legal research topics, why are we looking at law reform? Well, there's another video again on that issue for you to have a look at, to deal with that separately. But the short answer is law reform deals with everything you'd need to do in legal research. Most other research topics will focus on maybe legislation or case law or maybe some social science research, but law reform is one of the few areas that touches on everything. So there's a longer answer in the full video, but the short answer is it's a very, very useful research environment for us to examine, because it enables us to actually look at everything at the same time. And it's also a really important community service, and as legal professionals, being involved in law reform is very important. It's part of the pro bono work that we don't often think about. We think about working pro bono with clients or with pro bono advice, but we don't really, I think, talk about it enough at law school in terms of the importance of law reform work as part of what you do as a professional and as your professional service. Anyway, onto the study guides. The study guides are all stored in a service called Perusal, which is a kind of a hybrid of an online bookshelf and social media. So to get into Perusal, you'll have to log in with an established identity, and I think it'll take heaps of different things. It'll take Facebook, Twitter, Google, and various other identities. And please, when you create your identity on Perusal, please make sure you use your real name so we know who's who when we'll come to this in a moment. But it becomes important later on that we sort of can keep track of who's who, rather than coming up with a clever pseudonym. So that's how there's a link in Moodle that'll take you to the particular Perusal site, and that will have a bookshelf which will have all the files for all the readings and all the study guides, and you can download those, you can print them, you can do what you'd usually do with them. But the really interesting thing about Perusal is that you can also make comments through the Perusal service directly on the text. There's a section you think's interesting, highlight it and say, this is interesting, this is why. If you want to ask a question, you just ask a question in the same way. And if you once you put a question mark at the end, it'll identify that as a question, and it'll let me and others who are in the same system know that someone's got a question, and people will respond to it. So this is what I'm saying. It's a bit like a Kindle where you've got all your documents there in one place, but it's also a bit like social media in that you have a collective way of having conversations and engaging around it. So it's a new advancement in learning tech, and I think it's actually a really good one. It's still in its early stages. It's completely free, which is a good thing as well. But it's also a way of turning learning into a collaborative experience, and particularly reading, which is something that's often a bit solitary. It's often something you sort of do by yourself, sort of cut off from the rest of the world. This is a way of actually doing your reading in a way that is more social, and a lot of us learn in ways that are not completely social, but it certainly helps us get through the learning process. So there's links in Moodle to perusal. As I said, make sure you register as yourself, otherwise it's going to get confusing later on. But otherwise, have fun with it. You can't break it. There's nothing you can do wrong with it. I mean, short of the sorts of things you could normally do wrong with social media, in terms of saying terrible things about people. So, but in terms of actually just playing with the technology and using the technology, please get in and have a go and see it. Now, in terms of what's in the study guides each week, first is the readings, and the readings are not anything that's accessible or testable in any way, but they provide you with more context and more background in the topics for each week. So there's certainly something that will help you in understanding what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. Then in each section, in each study guide, there's a section called Navigating the Law, and the Navigating the Law section provides the skills basis for what we're doing each week, and provides you suggestions for what you need to be able to know how to do, and enables you to sort of test your own skills and see, well, where am I at? Am I confident? Can I do this? Can I do that? After that becomes a section that's called Key Concepts, and the Key Concepts section is just really explanation of aspects of the course or aspects of research skills in more depth, or interesting issues. And many of those will start being developed as videos as the course progresses, to make them more engaging. But at the moment, they're more in the form of interesting notes, interesting asides, and interesting concepts for you to think about. The next section is a section called Equilibrium. And in the Equilibrium section of each study guide, there's a bundle of study skills, well-being tips, and general guides to professional life. And we've put them in there to provide the counterbalance to all this sort of hard skills focus, to actually think about, well, how are you making sure you're taking care of yourself? How are you making sure that you are not stressing yourself out too much? Are you learning in a way that's effective and that's good for you? So we rely a lot on the material of a YouTuber called Thomas Frank, who's put some excellent resources online that we're sharing through those. But we're also using this as an opportunity for you to develop some of those good sort of healthy study skills that are going to be applicable not just in this subject but in other subjects as well. And then in each week that closes with the workshop, and each workshop task is a small stage along the path to your final project. And this is what we'll talk about when we talk about the research portfolio. But this is a way of modelling a research process which is not just wait until just before it's due and madly try and put everything together. It's to try and be disciplined and focused, and to work on a project stage by stage and in sections in a way that's planned and disciplined. And in professional life, that is what you have to do. Unfortunately, too many people in professional life still try and do things at the last minute, but it never works out well, and people end up stressed. And this is why many people say that they, feel terribly stressed in their job in the law. So, and sometimes the legal work is stressful, but sometimes people make their own stresses by not planning well, by not organising themselves. I'm hoping that one of the outcomes of this subject is that you actually come out of it more confident and more able to plan and focus and to be a healthier, happier, more rounded, well-rounded lawyer. Anyway, I've talked well and truly long enough for this particular video. I look forward to seeing you in the first tutorial, the first workshop, and I do hope this will be a subject that you find interesting and very useful.